My boyfriend said, "I need a new beginning without you." I replied, "Then start walking." I left cash on the table, went home, boxed everything he owned, and changed the building code. 3 weeks later, he was crying in my lobby, saying I was supposed to chase him. I never did. Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Hale. I'm 34 years old, and I used to believe the most honest moments in a relationship were never the loud ones. Not the slammed doors, not the screaming matches, not the dramatic speeches people replay later and call closure. The honest moments were quieter than that. They slipped out in calm voices, across ordinary tables, under soft lights, in places where nothing looked broken yet. Someone would say one simple sentence, and somehow, if you listen closely enough, you could hear an entire ending inside it. That was how Elias ended us. We had been together for almost 3 years, and for most of that time, I thought we were steady. Not perfect, just steady in the way real life sometimes feels, when two people have built enough routine to mistake it for commitment. We shared an apartment, groceries, bills, and weekend habits neither of us had officially agreed on, but somehow followed anyway. He knew how I took my coffee. I knew which side of the bed he drifted toward when he was tired. His jackets hung beside my coats. His shoes stayed by the door. His phone charger was always plugged into the outlet near my side of the couch because he liked sitting there while I cooked. Little things. The kind that makes someone feel woven into your life before you realize how easily they can pull themselves loose. Looking back, the first warning sign was not that Elias changed. It was that I kept explaining the changes away. He got quieter, and I told myself he was stressed. He came home later, and I told myself work was demanding. He started guarding his phone, turning it face down whenever I entered the room, and I told myself privacy mattered in a healthy relationship. The truth was, I was not blind. I was hopeful, and hope can make a smart woman ignore things she would warn another woman about. That afternoon did not feel like a turning point at first. That was the cruel part. It looked normal, almost boring. We were sitting in a cafe we had visited so many times, the staff barely needed to ask for our order. The window beside our table caught the late afternoon light, turning everything warm and harmless. Elias sat across from me, stirring his coffee even though he had not added sugar. He kept circling the spoon around and around, metal tapping porcelain, small sound, sharp rhythm. I remember noticing that before I noticed his face. He looked calm, too calm. I asked if something was wrong. He did not answer right away. He looked past me, toward the street, like the words were already arranged somewhere outside the window and he was just waiting for them to reach him. Then he said, "I think I need a new beginning." At first, I did not panic. People say things like that when they are tired, when they hate their job, when they feel trapped in a version of themselves they no longer recognize. I thought maybe he meant moving apartments, changing work, taking a trip, starting therapy. Anything but what came next. So I asked carefully, "What does that mean?" He finally looked at me. There was no softness in his expression, no guilt, no hesitation, just a clean, settled distance. "I need a new beginning without you." The cafe kept moving around us. Someone laughed near the counter. A cup clinked onto a saucer. The door opened behind me, letting in the sound of traffic, then closed again. But at our table, everything went still. Not because I did not understand, because I understood too quickly. There are moments when your heart wants to ask questions your dignity already knows the answer to. Why? Since when? Is there someone else? Did I do something? Can we fix this? But his voice had already answered all of them. This was not confusion. This was not a breakdown. This was not a man asking to be understood. This was a man announcing a decision he had rehearsed before he sat down. I looked at him for a few seconds. He looked back like he expected the scene to begin. Maybe tears, maybe pleading, maybe me reaching across the table, touching his hand, asking him not to throw us away. Instead, I picked up my purse. His eyebrows moved slightly. That was the first crack in his calm. "Then start walking," I said. That was all. No raised voice, no insult, no performance. Just one sentence placed between us like a locked door. Elias stared at me as if he had heard the words, but not the meaning. Marina. I opened my wallet, took out enough cash to cover both coffees, and set it on the table. He blinked. "You're just leaving?" I looked at him, and for the first time that afternoon, I felt something colder than heartbreak. Clarity. You said you wanted a beginning without me, I told him. I'm not going to stand in the doorway. Then I left. I did not rush. I did not look back. I walked out of that cafe with my hands steady, though something inside me had gone painfully quiet. The drive home should have felt unbearable. People imagined tears at red lights, shaking hands on the steering wheel, desperate replays of every word. But I did not cry. Not then. Shock sometimes protects you for a little while. It wraps itself around your ribs and says, "Not yet. You can fall apart later. First, you need to move." So I moved. When I got back to the apartment, I stood in the doorway and looked at everything we had shared. The framed photo from our first trip, his gray hoodie over the dining chair, the mug he always used even though it had a crack near the handle. The apartment still looked like us. That was the first thing I changed. I walked to the bedroom, pulled 2 empty suitcases from the closet, and started packing everything that belonged to Elias. I folded his shirts, paired his socks, wrapped his cologne bottle in one of his sweaters so it would not break. Every object had a memory attached to it, and I refused to let any of them stop me. Because the man at that cafe had not asked for space. He had asked for a life without me. So I gave it to him exactly. I didn't stop after the first suitcase. Drawer by drawer, shelf by shelf, every space Elias had slowly filled over 3 years, I cleared with the same steady pace I had used walking out of that cafe. There's something people don't talk about when relationships end like that. When there's no screaming, no betrayal you can point to, no moment you can blame everything on, it doesn't feel like something shattered. It feels like something quietly removed itself, leaving only the outline of where it used to be. I found his watch in the bathroom, sitting beside the sink. He always took it off when he washed his hands, saying he didn't want water spots on the glass. I held it for a second longer than I should have, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I remembered the exact way his wrist looked wearing it. That was the hardest part. Not losing him. Losing the version of my life where he still fit. I placed the watch carefully into a small box with the rest of his things. By the time I reached the closet, my movements had become automatic. His jackets came down from the hangers one by one, and the empty space they left behind looked bigger than it should have. Cleaner, colder, honest. I didn't mix anything. That mattered to me. I didn't want blurred lines left behind. No forgotten shirt he could come back for. No excuse to reopen a conversation that had already ended. By the time the sun had set, everything that belonged to Elias was packed. 2 suitcases, 3 boxes. One life, reduced to things that could be carried out in a single trip. I stood in the middle of the living room and looked around again. This time, it didn't look like ours anymore. It looked like mine. And that shift didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt aligned, like something that had been slightly off for a while had finally clicked into place. I didn't sit down to process it. I didn't wait for a message. I picked up my phone and handled the next part. "Hi, this is Marina from 14B, I said when the building management answered. "I need to update the access code." There was a pause on the other end. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "Yes," I replied. "I just need to make sure only authorized access is active moving forward." I didn't explain further. Within a few minutes, the code was changed. Simple. Final. There's a difference between acting out of anger and acting out of understanding. Anger wants to hurt the other person. Understanding just removes what no longer belongs. That night, Elias didn't come back. Not late, not confused, not even to grab something he had forgotten. And that silence said more than any apology ever could. If there had been even a part of him unsure about what he had done, he would have shown up. He would have knocked. He would have texted. He would have tried to soften the impact of what he said. But he didn't, which meant what happened at that cafe wasn't impulsive. It was planned. And more importantly, he was comfortable with it. I slept that night without checking my phone. The next day passed the same way. Work, home, dinner, silence. By the 3rd day, my phone finally lit up with his name, Elias. "Hey, can I come by and grab my things?" No apology, no acknowledgement, just logistics like the past 3 years could be folded into a pickup schedule. I stared at the message for a few seconds, noticing the tone, casual, careful, almost like he expected everything to still be manageable, like this was just a phase we were passing through. I typed back, "Everything's already packed." You can arrange a time with the front desk." A few seconds later, it buzzed again. "Elias, you packed everything?" There it was, the first sign that something wasn't going the way he expected. Eventually, I answered, "Yes, that was all." Another pause, longer this time, then, "Elias, okay, I'll come by tomorrow. Tomorrow." Like it was still his place to walk into. I didn't correct him. I didn't need to, because tomorrow wasn't going to look the way he thought it would. The next afternoon, I made sure I wasn't home. Not to avoid him, but because there was nothing left to say. I had already listened to what he told me, and I had already responded. Everything after that would just be repetition. I left the boxes and suitcases near the entrance, neatly arranged and easy to carry. I informed the front desk of the time he would arrive. Then I walked out. When I came back later that evening, everything was gone. No boxes, no suitcases, no trace of him left behind. I stepped inside, closed the door, and leaned against it for a moment. The apartment was quieter, but not emptier. That's the difference people misunderstand. Empty feels like something is missing. Quiet feels like something unnecessary is gone. Over the next few days, he sent a few more messages. Nothing heavy, nothing emotional, just small check-ins. "Did you find my charger? I think I left a book there. How have you been?" That last one almost made me pause. Almost. But I answered all of them the same way. Short, neutral, closed. "No. It's in the box. I'm fine. Not cold, not cruel, just final." And that's when I started to notice the shift. Not in me, in him. The more consistent I was, the less control he seemed to have over the situation he created. People don't always react well when their expectations collapse. They don't always say it directly, but you can hear it in the spaces between their words. The hesitation, the change in tone, the way they start asking questions they didn't think they'd need answers to. Then the messages stopped. 3 weeks is a strange amount of time, not long enough to forget someone, but long enough to realize what they're not doing. Elias stopped checking in after that first week. No more casual questions. No more, "Did you find this?" or "I think I left that." Just silence. At first, it almost felt intentional, like he was giving me space. But after a while, I understood something else. He wasn't stepping back. He was waiting. Waiting for me to reach out. Waiting for me to break the silence he created. Waiting for me to do exactly what he thought I would do the moment he said he wanted a life without me. Chase him. That realization didn't come all at once. It showed up slowly in the way his last message had ended. "How have you been?" Not because he cared. Because he expected an opening, a crack in the door, something he could step back through if he decided he wanted to. When I didn't give him that, the silence stretched. The first week felt like distance. The second started to feel like tension. By the third, it felt like pressure, not on me, on him. I didn't think about him every day, but there were moments. I'd reach for a second cup in the morning before remembering I didn't need it. I'd hear a song he used to play in the car and feel that brief, sharp pause before the memory passed. I'd open the closet and still expect to see his jackets on the left side. Habits don't disappear immediately. They fade. But I didn't want him back. Not in the way he left. Not in the way he expected to return. Because once someone shows you they can walk away that easily, you stop believing in the version of them that stays. The third week was when things shifted. It was a Wednesday evening. I had just gotten home, kicked off my shoes, and set my bag down on the kitchen counter when my phone rang. Not a message. A call. From the front desk. "Hi, Miss Hale," the receptionist said. "There's someone here asking to see you." I didn't ask who. I already knew. "I'll come down," I said. I didn't rush. I washed my hands, fixed a loose strand of hair in the mirror, and took a breath. Not because I needed courage, but because I didn't feel anything urgent pulling me toward that conversation. 3 weeks ago, I would have run. Not to beg, but to understand. Now, I already understood. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I saw him immediately. Elias was standing near the entrance, just past the seating area, and for the first time since I had met him, he didn't look like himself. Physically, he looked the same. Same jacket, same posture, same presence. But something underneath had shifted. His eyes were red, His jaw was tight. His hands kept moving slightly, like he wasn't sure where to put them. When he saw me, relief crossed his face first, then hesitation, then something close to panic. I walked toward him, steady. We stopped a few feet apart, close enough to talk, far enough that nothing felt familiar. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he broke first. "You really just let me go like that?" His voice cracked on the last word. No hello, no apology, just that. "I didn't stop you," I said. He shook his head immediately, like the answer hurt more than he expected. "That's not the same thing." There it was. Not regret, not missing me. Expectation. "You didn't even try," he added. And in that moment, everything became clear. Not just what happened, but what he thought would happen. "I listened to what you said," I told him, "and I respected it." He opened his mouth like he was about to argue, then stopped. For the first time since I walked up, he didn't have an immediate response. "That's not how this was supposed to go," he said finally, almost to himself. That sentence told me everything. There had been a plan, not spoken, not admitted, but real. In his mind, this wasn't an ending. It was a setup, a way to trigger emotion, reaction, proof. I tilted my head slightly. "That's how it went." He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. For a second, he looked almost lost, like someone who had rehearsed a conversation that no longer applied. Then he stepped a little closer and lowered his voice. "I thought you'd fight for me." There it was, not hidden anymore, not implied, a test, not of love, of control. I looked at him for a moment, letting the words settle between us. Then I asked evenly, "Fight for what?" He blinked, like the question caught him off guard. "For us," he said. "For what we had." I didn't interrupt him. Now that he was speaking honestly, I wanted him to hear himself all the way through. "You just let it go," he continued, his voice tightening. "Like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter." There it was again. Not grief, not loss, ego. "You told me you wanted a life without me," I said. "I believed you." "That's not the same thing," he pushed back quickly. "People say things. They don't always mean them like that." You sounded very sure. "I was stressed," he said. "I needed space." "No," I replied. "You didn't ask for space. You ended it." He went quiet. Then he reached for another angle. "You didn't even ask why. You didn't try to fix anything." "Because there was nothing to fix on my side," I said. "You didn't come to me with a problem. You came with a decision." He looked at me like that answer didn't fit the version of this conversation he had imagined. "That's not fair," he said, sharper now. "You're acting like you didn't care at all." I didn't react to that. That's where people get pulled back in, when the conversation turns into defending your feelings instead of holding your boundaries. "I cared enough to listen," I said, "and to respect what you asked for. No, you just gave up." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. "I didn't give up," I said. "You walked away. And you let me." "Yes," I answered. "Because that's what you wanted." His eyes searched my face, looking for a crack, some sign that this calm was an act. But there was nothing for him to grab onto, because I wasn't performing strength. I was standing in it. "You really didn't think I'd come back?" he asked, quieter now. "No." That landed. I saw it in the way his expression shifted. "I thought," he started, then stopped. I didn't fill the silence for him. "I thought you'd need me," he said finally. And that was the truth. Not love, not confusion, control. "I used to," I said. "But not like that." He stared at me, trying to understand. So I gave it to him clearly. "I needed the version of you that was choosing me," I continued, "not the one testing whether I'd stay after you stopped." That hit harder than anything else I had said, because it didn't attack him. It defined him. For a moment, he didn't speak. The lobby around us continued like normal, people walking in and out, quiet conversations, the soft hum of the elevator, but none of it touched the space we were standing in. Something was collapsing, not loudly, but completely. "I didn't think you'd actually be okay with it," he said, his voice lower now. "I never said I was okay," I replied. "I said I understood." That difference stayed between us, clear, unavoidable. And for the first time since I had come down to the lobby, he didn't try to correct me. The version of this story he believed in, the one where he leaves, I chase, and everything resets, didn't exist anymore. And he was finally starting to see that. The silence after that felt different. Elias looked at me like he was trying to find a version of me that no longer existed, the one who would soften, the one who would step closer, the one who would say, "We can fix this." But that version had stayed at the cafe, and I had walked out without her. "I think you're overreacting," he said, trying a different angle. "It didn't have to go this far." "People take breaks," he continued. "They say things in the moment. It doesn't mean everything just ends." There it was again, rewriting, not what happened, what he wanted it to mean. "You didn't ask for a break," I said. "You said you wanted a life without me. You're taking it too literally." Clarity only feels too literal to people who are counting on ambiguity. "I took it exactly how you said it," I replied. He paced half a step before stopping himself. "This isn't how relationships work. You don't just walk away like that." "I didn't walk away," I said. "I stepped aside." That stopped him. Because the difference mattered. Walking away is leaving something unfinished. Stepping aside is recognizing it's already over. "You didn't even try to stop me," he said again, weaker this time. "I didn't need to. You were already gone." Another pause, more exposed. "You could have at least shown something," he said quietly. "Anything." There it was, the real request. Not love, not reconciliation, validation, proof that he mattered enough to disrupt me. "I did show something," I said. "I showed you I listened." He shook his head slowly. "No, that's not what I mean." "I know." And I did. He wanted emotion, reaction, something messy enough to reassure him that he still had influence over me. But calm is a different kind of power, and he didn't know what to do with it. "I thought you'd at least call," he admitted, "or text, or something." "Why would I?" He blinked, because now the expectation had to stand on its own. "Because we were together," he said. "And then we weren't," I replied. That landed harder than anything else. Simple truths usually do. For a second, he just stared at me. "You really moved on that fast?" "I didn't move on fast," I said. "I accepted what happened immediately." That distinction mattered. Moving on suggests replacing something. Acceptance just means you stop resisting reality. He looked down briefly, then back at me. "I didn't think you were like this." "Neither did I answered honestly. That part was true. I hadn't known I could be this clear until I had to be. He took a step back this time. Not forward, back. And that small movement said more than anything he had said out loud. It meant he was starting to understand his position in this moment, not the one he imagined, the real one. "You didn't even leave the door open," he said, almost to himself. "No," I said, "because you didn't ask me to wait." Silence again. But this time it wasn't tension, it was collapse. Everything he thought would happen didn't. Everything he expected from me never came. And now there was nothing left to adjust, nothing left to test, nothing left to control. "I guess I misjudged you," he said after a while. "Maybe," I replied. I didn't need to prove anything beyond that. He looked at me for a few seconds longer, like he was waiting for me to soften at the last second, to change my mind, to let the version of me he remembered come back. But she didn't. And she wasn't going to. He stood there a few seconds longer, eyes still red, breathing unevenly. For the first time since he walked into my life, he didn't know what came next. No script, no expectation, no reaction he could predict. Just silence that didn't belong to him. "I thought," he started again, then stopped. This time, he didn't fix the sentence. He just let it fall. And I let it stay there, unfinished. Because not everything needs to be explained to be understood. After a moment, he nodded slightly. Not in agreement, not in acceptance, just acknowledgement, like someone realizing they had reached the end of something they didn't think would actually end. "I guess that's it," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted that moment to be clear. Not rushed, not softened, just real. Yes, I said. One word. Final. He looked at me again, searching for something human, something familiar, something that would make this feel less absolute. But there wasn't anything left to offer. Not because I was cold, because I was done. He gave a small nod, then turned. No dramatic pause. No last look over his shoulder. No second attempt. He just walked toward the exit exactly the way he said he wanted to. The glass doors opened, then closed behind him. And just like that, he was gone. This time, completely. I didn't follow. I didn't call his name. I didn't stand there wondering if I should have said something different. Because I already had. At the cafe. At home. In every message. In every choice I made after he told me who he was. The receptionist glanced at me briefly, like she was trying to read the situation, but I gave her a small nod and turned toward the elevator. Normal. Everything was normal again. That was the strange part. People expect endings to feel loud, to leave some kind of echo behind. But this one didn't. It just settled, like a door closing in another room. You hear it, you recognize it. Then the silence returns. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't go straight to the couch or check my phone. I walked through the space slowly. The living room, the kitchen, the bedroom. Everything looked the same as it had for the past 3 weeks. And for the first time, I realized something important. Nothing felt like it was missing. Not one thing. Because what was gone had already been gone since the moment he sat across from me and said he wanted a life without me. That was when it ended. Everything after that was just me respecting it. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city move the way it always does. People walking, cars passing, lights flickering on one by one as the evening settled in. Life doesn't pause for clarity. It just keeps going. And you either move with it or you stay stuck in something that's already finished. My phone stayed quiet that night. No message, no call, no sudden realization from him. And I didn't expect one. Because people don't always come back with understanding. Sometimes they just leave with it. Weeks passed, then more. And slowly, the memory of that conversation at the cafe stopped feeling sharp. It became something else, a point, a moment, a line I could trace back to and say, that's where everything became clear. Not where I lost something, where I stopped holding on to something that wasn't holding on to me. I never saw Elias again after that day in the lobby. No unexpected messages, no second attempts, no, I made a mistake. And honestly, that was the cleanest ending I could have asked for. Because there was nothing left unfinished. No unanswered questions, no lingering confusion, just a choice that was made and respected. People think strength is loud, that it looks like confrontation, like standing your ground in a fight, like refusing to let someone walk away. But sometimes strength is quieter than that. Sometimes it's sitting across from someone you once loved, hearing him say he wants a life without you, and choosing not to argue, not to chase, not to convince him otherwise, just to stand up, step aside, and let him have exactly what he asked for, even if it means he has to live with it.